It is 9:56 on a Tuesday morning in Columbus, Ohio. The date is the 30th of December, 2025. It's the kind of morning where the air feels heavy and damp, and the sky is a flat, unmoving sheet of gray. On North 4th Street, in a pocket of the city called Weinland Park, a man is standing on the front porch of a beautiful, renovated brick home. He's shifting his weight from one foot to the other, checking his watch, and staring at the dark screen of his phone. This man isn't a stranger. He's a friend, a coworker who has driven all the way here because something feels deeply, fundamentally wrong. The silence coming from inside the house is a physical weight. He reaches out and knocks again, harder this time, but the only response is the muffled sound of a dog barking somewhere in the back. A golden doodle, the kind of family dog that usually greets friends with a wagging tail, now sounds frantic. He calls 911. You can hear the absolute bone-deep panic in his voice as soon as the dispatcher picks up. He tells the operator that he can hear children inside. He says he's almost certain he heard one of them yell out, a sharp, thin sound that cut through the quiet. But no matter how much noise he makes, nobody is coming to answer the door. He's stuck on that porch, caught in that terrible space between the fear of overreacting and the sickening gut feeling that he's standing on the doorstep of a catastrophe. 7 minutes later, that same man calls back. This time, the panic is gone, replaced by a hollow, jagged kind of shock. His voice is lower now, trembling with an emotion that's hard to name. He tells the operator 3 words that change everything. There's a body. He'd finally leaned over far enough to look through a side window. In the dim light of the bedroom, he saw his friend, Spencer, lying on the floor near a bed. There was blood, a lot of it. Within minutes, the quiet of that residential street was shattered by the scream of sirens as the Columbus Division of Police raced toward the 1400 block. When the tactical unit finally kicked that door in at 10:04 a.m., they stepped into a scene that felt like a glitch in reality. Spencer and his wife, Monique, were both dead. But in another room, the couple's 2 tiny children, a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy, were found alive. They were physically fine, but they'd been in that house for hours, trapped in a silent home with their parents' bodies, waiting for a mother and father who would never wake up again. Free that no. And him, ovary now. Free that no. And may mine. Before we go any further into the dark history of this specific street and the theories that have left the Columbus Homicide Unit searching for a ghost, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Here at Crime Cortex, we don't just report the news. We look for the truth that the headlines miss. Free that no. And he'll not tree that not. And let's start off the way we always do. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city and state in the comments. It's always incredible to see how many people from all over the world come together to help look for the truth. To understand why this case has left the city of Columbus in a state of shock, you have to look at the lives Spencer and Monique were building. Dr. Spencer Tepe was 37 years old. He was a man whose life was defined by discipline and a massive heart for service. He grew up in Mason, down near Cincinnati, and eventually made his way to Columbus to attend the Ohio State University. He wasn't just a student who did enough to get by. He was a high achiever. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Biology, but he also double majored in Spanish. That wasn't just some academic whim. He wanted to be able to talk to his patients in their own language. He wanted to bridge the gap for people who often feel invisible in a medical office. He stayed at OSU for his Doctor of Dental Surgery, graduating in 2017. From there, his career was a steady, successful climb. He worked at Stone Creek Dental in Ashland for a while, but eventually, he landed a position at Athens Dental Depot. Now, if you're familiar with the geography of Central Ohio, You know that Athens is about 75 miles away from Columbus. That is a long haul to do every single day. Route 33 is a straight shot, but it's a tiring one, especially in the winter when the black ice starts to form. Still, Spencer did it. He was the kind of guy who was never late. His colleagues said he was the most reliable person on the entire team. If he was supposed to be in the office at 8:30, he was there at 8:15 with a smile on his face, ready to work. He specialized in comprehensive dentistry and dental implant therapy. This is high-stakes work. It requires precision, patience, and a high level of trust. When a patient sits in that chair, they are vulnerable. Spencer knew that. He spent hundreds of hours in continuing education, perfecting his craft so his patients felt safe. But he didn't just care about teeth. He was a die-hard Bengals fan. He lived for Buckeye football Saturdays, and he spent his free time volunteering for Big Brothers Big Sisters. He spent his life trying to be a protector and a mentor for others. He was the guy people called when they needed advice or a helping hand. Then you have Monique. She was 39, a woman who brought warmth to every room she entered. She was an educator, someone who had dedicated her career to childhood development and teaching. Her brother, Rob Misley, described her as a loving, patient, and joyful mother. She was the one who planned the family gatherings, the one who baked the bread, the one who transformed that house on North 4th Street into a real sanctuary. She brought that same care and intention into her work with children, focusing on the formative years where a little bit of kindness goes a long way. And that house was special to them. Spencer and Monique were married right there in that living room back in 2021. They were less than a month away from celebrating their 5th wedding anniversary when the end came. Think about the symbolism of that for a second. The very place where they exchanged their vows, where they brought their babies home from the hospital, was the same place where someone decided their lives should end. They were the gold standard of a young, professional family. They lived for their kids. They had even set aside their own hobbies, like Spencer's golf and Monique's running, just to focus on being the best parents they could be. Their social life revolved around their home. They always had people over. Their place was the hub where the music was always playing and there was always something fresh in the oven. The alarm in this case didn't go off because of a tripped security system or a broken window. It went off because of Spencer's punctuality. On the morning of December 30, when 8:30 a.m. came and went, and Spencer wasn't at the clinic in Athens, his boss, Dr. Mark Valrose, knew something was wrong immediately. Spencer just didn't miss work. Valrose called 911 at 8:58 a.m. He told the dispatcher that Spencer's absence was very out of character. But what really made him worry was the fact that he couldn't get a hold of Monique either. He told the operator that was probably the more concerning thing. Valrose was actually on vacation himself, but he was so unsettled by the silence from the Tepe home that he started making calls from wherever he was. He knew the rhythm of Spencer's life. He knew that if Spencer wasn't in Athens and Monique wasn't answering her phone in Columbus, something was broken. Engagement prompt. #2. Let's take a second to check in with the community. What time is it right now where you are? It's interesting to see when you guys find the time to dive into these cases with us. Now, let's talk about the ground where this happened. North 4th Street, Weinland Park. To a newcomer, this looks like a thriving, revitalized neighborhood. You see the tightly packed brick buildings, the traditional storefronts on High Street with their brightly painted murals, and the modern condominiums that have sprouted up in the last decade. The city even installed these lighted metal arches that stretch across High Street, giving the whole area a vibrant, historic feel. It's the kind of place where people want to live, but the history of Weinland Park is layered with scars. If you go back to the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds, this area was a war zone. It was the headquarters of the Short North Posse, one of the most violent gangs in the history of Columbus. This wasn't just a group of kids on a corner. This was a highly organized criminal enterprise. They formed in 1989 to control the sale of cocaine, and they did it with a level of ruthlessness that the city hadn't seen before. The intersection of 4th and 8th, just blocks from where the Tepes were living, was once called the most dangerous corner in the entire city. It was a place defined by Mach 10 seconds and drive-by shootings. The posse held their status through absolute violence. If you were an outsider and you tried to sell drugs in their territory, you were beaten, robbed, or killed. They lived in the row houses with their families, and they regulated the streets with an iron fist. U.S. Attorney Edmund Sargas called them the largest and most violent gang in the area. A federal judge once described the gang as a cancer on the north side. Still, if you talk to the residents who had lived there for generations, they had a different perspective. They saw a crew that protected the neighborhood from outside exploitation. It was a place where the police would take forever to respond if someone got shot. There was prostitution, there were drug sales, and there was a constant sense of being on edge. You had to be strapped just to walk to the store. But then came the 2000s. The city and Ohio State University decided enough was enough. They launched a program called Weed and Seed. The goal was simple: weed out the violent offenders with federal raids and seed the community with investment. In 1995, there was a massive roundup where 46 members of the Short North Posse were arrested on drug and weapons charges. Over the next 15 years, the raids continued, scattering the gang members across central Ohio. The seed part of the program brought in new parks, new schools, and people like the Tepes. Developers bought up the abandoned factories, places like the Jeffrey Manufacturing Company and Columbus Coated Fabrics, and turned them into residential hubs. Property values began to climb. The under triple digits movement was gaining steam, with the city aiming to keep homicides under 100 for the first time in years. The Tepes were part of this new chapter. They restored their home. They were the faces of the neighborhood's future. But the street doesn't always forget its past. Even with a police crime camera mounted on a utility pole just a few hundred feet from their front door, someone managed to find a way in. In 2010, about 20% of the housing in Weinland Park was still abandoned. By 2025, those numbers were much lower, but the poverty rate in the neighborhood stayed at over 50%, compared to about 20% in Columbus overall. That kind of economic divide creates a specific kind of tension. You have these high-value, upscale homes sitting right next to areas that are still struggling to escape the shadow of the 90 seconds. When you look at the map of 1411 North 4th Street, you see a neighborhood that is trying to be two things at once. It's a place of progress, and it's a place of memory. And on December 30, those two worlds collided. Binom C. Cases like this remind us how fragile our safety can be, even in neighborhoods that are supposed to be safe. If you're finding this deep dive valuable, please hit the like button. It tells the algorithm that this story needs more eyes on it, and more eyes could mean more leads for the family. Let's go back to the morning of the 30th and look at the timeline of the investigation. When that first police officer arrived for the welfare check at 9:22 a.m., he didn't just knock once. He walked around the entire house. He looked at the doors. He peered through the windows. From his perspective, everything looked secure. There were no broken panes of glass. There were no signs of a struggle. Because the house looked fine on the outside and he didn't have a warrant or exigent circumstances to kick in the door, he left. But 30 minutes later, the Tepes colleagues and a friend arrived. They didn't care about the legalities of a welfare check. They were operating on instinct. When they got to the porch, they heard the sound that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Children crying inside. Not just crying, but yelling. The kind of sound a child makes when they are scared and alone. One of the friends finally managed to see inside. He saw Spencer lying on the floor near the bed. He was in his blood. The friend could tell immediately that he wasn't breathing. He called 911 again, and this time, the police didn't just knock. They made a tactical entry. Inside the bedroom, they found Spencer. He had been shot multiple times. Monique was found as well. She had been hit at least once in the chest. They were both pronounced dead at 10:11 a.m. by Columbus Fire Department Medic 7. And here is where the forensic puzzle begins. Detectives Weiner and Miller were the leads on this case. As they processed the scene, they found 3 9mm shell casings. Now, 9mm is a common caliber, but the placement of those shells is critical. In a shooting, the casings tell you where the shooter was standing. They tell you the angle of the fire. In this case, the lack of other bullet holes or signs of a chaotic shootout suggests a shooter who was calm and efficient. But the biggest clue was what wasn't there. There was no gun. In Central Ohio, like many other places, the first theory in a case where a husband and wife are found dead is a murder-suicide. It is a tragic, repetitive pattern in domestic violence. But when the detectives realized there was no weapon in the house, they were able to rule that out almost immediately. You cannot shoot yourself and then hide the firearm. This was a double homicide. This was an execution. And then you have the children, a 4-year-old girl and a 1-year-old boy. They were in a different room. They were physically unharmed. Why? Criminologists and national security analysts like Juliette Kayyem have weighed in on this. When a killer spares children in a scene this violent, it usually points to a very specific profile. One scenario is the stranger at the door. This is a killer who may be a career criminal, but they have a personal code. They don't hurt kids. They have a specific target, the adults, and once that task is done, they leave. But this scenario is rare, especially when there are no signs of forced entry. The other scenario is someone who knew the Tepes, someone who knew the layout of the house, someone who knew that on a Tuesday morning, Spencer would be getting ready for his 75-mile drive. If the killer knew the couple, they might have had a personal connection to the children. They might have been someone the kids recognized, or someone who simply couldn't bring themselves to hurt the innocent. The children were in that house for hours. Think about the psychological impact of that. The 4-year-old is old enough to remember sounds. She's old enough to know that something was wrong. The trauma they endured, being in a home that had turned from a place of warmth into a crime scene, is something the family is now trying to help them navigate. Engagement prompt #3. We're curious what's the weather like today where you're watching. It's a gray, heavy day here as we record this, and it feels right for a story like this. Bien, I were. The search for the killer has now moved into the digital realm. The Columbus Homicide Unit is leaning hard on the neighborhood's security network. In a gentrified area like Weinland Park, almost every other house has a Ring doorbell or a security camera. The police have released a QR code, begging the public to submit any video or photos they have from a very specific window, midnight to 9 a.m. on December 30. They are focused on a 4-block radius. Summit Street to the east, North Grant Avenue to the west, East 7th Avenue to the south, and East 11th Avenue to the north. They aren't just looking for the crime itself, they are looking for movement. A car that doesn't belong, a person walking with their hood up, a shadow crossing a porch at 4 a.m. Somewhere in that data is the face of the person who took Spencer and Monique away from their children. but it is a massive amount of information to sift through. Detectives have to look at every frame, cross-referencing license plates and timestamps, and then there is the question of motive. If nothing was stolen and the police haven't reported any missing high-value items, then this wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This was personal. Was it a professional dispute? Spencer was a dentist. People don't often think of dentistry as a dangerous profession, but think about the reality of it. You are dealing with people in pain. You are dealing with expensive medical procedures and insurance claims. You are dealing with controlled substances. Spencer worked in comprehensive dentistry and dental implants. These are procedures that can cost thousands of dollars and involve months of follow-up care. Was there a patient with a grievance? Was there a business dispute at the clinic in Athens or his former practice in Ashland? Or was it something in their personal lives? Their marriage was described as beautiful, strong, and deeply happy. But investigators have to look at everything. They have to look at phone records, emails, and financial statements. They have to see if there was a narrative, as Juliet Kayyem put it, that explains why they were targeted. The fact that they were married in that house adds a layer of tragic irony. They had built their world within those four walls. They felt safe there. They had their pet golden doodle, their 2 kids, and a life rooted in love. Whoever did this knew exactly how to shatter that world. This case reminds us how fragile our safety can be. What do you think the motive was? Does the lack of forced entry point to someone they knew, or just a very skilled intruder who understood the neighborhood? Share your theories respectfully below. Today, the house on North 4th Street is quiet. The police tape is gone, but the atmosphere in Weinland Park has changed. The under triple digits goal for the city was met, but for the Tepe family, that statistic means nothing. They are living in a reality that can't be measured by numbers. The family released a statement through Monique's brother, Rob Misley. They said they are devastated by the tragic and senseless loss. They described Spencer and Monique as extraordinary people. They talked about Spencer's energy and Monique's warmth. They talked about the life they were building, a life that was supposed to last for decades. But the most powerful part of their statement was their commitment to justice. They said they won't stop until this tragedy is fully and fairly brought to justice. They are focused on protecting the future of the 2 children who are now in the care of relatives. Those kids have a long road ahead of them. They will grow up with stories of their parents, but they will also grow up with the weight of how they were taken. The Columbus community has stepped up to help. There has been an outpouring of support for the family, with people leaving flowers near the home and sharing memories of Spencer's care at the dental clinic. His employer, Dr. Mark Valrose, said Spencer would be deeply missed by our team and the many patients he cared for over the years. The office in Athens closed for the rest of the week out of respect. But sympathy isn't enough. The family needs answers. The police need that one piece of digital evidence, that one Ring doorbell clip that shows a car driving away at 6 a.m., or a person walking down North Grant Avenue with a weapon hidden in their coat. If you have any information, no matter how small it seems, you need to call. The Columbus Police Homicide Unit is at 614-645-4730. You can also call Central Ohio Crime Stoppers at 614461-TIPS. You don't have to give your name, you just have to give the truth. This case is a reminder that the punctuality paradox of Spencer Tepe, the very discipline that made him a great dentist, was the thing that ensured he was found quickly. But it hasn't yet led to an arrest. The killer is still out there, and as long as they are, the shadow over Weinland Park will stay. En case, stum. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the Tepe case. If you want to support the family or stay updated on the investigation, check the links in our description. Don't forget to share this video. The more people see these faces, the harder it is for a killer to stay hidden. One share could reach the person who knows the truth. I'm the voice behind Crime Cortex. Stay alert, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.